Have you ever been to Fairfield, Iowa, where Maharishi International University is?
No, but I know of it.
Okay, so to me, like, there's so many people that are there for modalities and they stay. Like, so there's multiple massage therapists, there's multiple bowl people, there's multiple, like, all these different things. I want to create these mini Maharishi universities or Fairfields everywhere, or Ochos everywhere, you know, because I agree it's that same thing.
Yeah.
We're along for this beautiful ride. And how do we create play and love in it and continue to add to it, you know? So
yeah. And I think so many people are looking for that opportunity to participate and to belong to something that is different than what the mainstream options are to people. And, you know, sometimes that starts a lot, sometimes in festival and counterculture, but often folks never find their way out of that.
Yeah.
You know, like I feel like that's what festival culture should be, a gateway to that next thing.
Yeah.
And it's great at that, but without enough of these projects, you know, to really capture the motivation and the heart and the intellect of all these fresh thinkers with radical new ideas that don't want to participate in the machine.
Yeah.
But we need more options.
Well
so
said.
Yeah, let's create more options.
Yep. Well said. And that's the other thing you hit spot on. I'm sure that Nick is likely already recording. And so we've already moved into segment, just so you know, in my opinion. So
yeah, it's a natural flow. Let's go.
Good. Okay. So, but what's interesting to me that's inclusive of that is so many people, they get stuck in the rat race. But what was it? You ended with something that was what you just said. Remind me what you just said. Your last two sentences there.
We creating more opportunities for people to take their energy and their ideas, which will help move us to that new place.
Yes,
we
that's
need
it.
to be.
So what's crazy to me is so many people out there think, oh, it's my festival. You got to come to my festival. So rather than be association type thinking, where the people that are throwing the festivals are throwing these different types of groups or opportunities, rather than getting together and saying what's working and what's not, they think, oh, it's all about mine. You got to come to mine. And it's exactly that. Like, you know, when I go to a big event like a Burning Man subchapter event or a big festival, I don't want to leave. I want to be around these people all the time. So it's like if people literally had these communities, these little sub-communities, and they went to these events, and then it's like, now after the event, where do you go? And these sub-communities existed, you know, it would be magical to have so many.
Well, you know, working on it.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, you know, I often really try to pay attention to my own language and how I state things, right? Because, you know, it's really easy to say, well, we need more of this. And it's, you know, that gets into be the trap of they need to build the thing. And so it's like, what can I and my community do, right? And that's what this Ocho project we were talking about earlier is all about, right? Because that grew from that participation in the Burning Man culture and the after hours warehouse scenes. And we just, as a crew, wanted something to show for our long-term efforts, because we realized, you know, we're doing this because we love hanging out. We love building things. We love sharing information and ideas. And so how do we create something that not only do we have something to show for it in the long run, but if we're tied into nature and tied into regenerative ecological practices, then what we did actually grew and got better in our absence, which is also exciting.
Totally.
You know, and so I don't think enthusiasm and excitement and just good vibes, I don't think the value of those things can be overstated.
Yeah, 100%.
And especially where, some might view our modern American world being really peppered with, depression and mental health issues. And I think so many of these things can be directly addressed by participation with people and planet. And, fun is contagious. Smiles are contagious. I love just walking around in the world and just smiling at people. You ever randomly high five someone in a grocery store? It makes their moment.
Yes,
right? And if you get your moment made, it's only going to boost your afternoon, which is nice. Yeah. Look at all of us smiling right now, just even thinking about that in our head, right? Yep. And one of the laws of physics is objects in motion tend to stay in motion. And so if we can move the needle towards happiness, even if it's just these little moments at first, an object at rest tends to stay at rest.
For sure.
That looks like sadness and depression and lack of motivation. And those things are very real.
Yeah.
Right? They're not imaginary.
Yeah, 100%.
But so I've been increasingly interested in how I can positively affect people through the things that we all love, the universal language of the human experience. Yeah. Some might think it's love, which is partially true, but is food. Right?
Breaking bread definitely does it for me.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
You could probably live longer without a romantic relationship than you can without food. So, not to.
Well, I'd hate
to go without either. I
came off a 7-day fast.
Okay.
And I wanted to go for 21. But I'd say I probably need food more than the relationship. Now, the relationship to food, that's a different thing.
Sure. Sure.
That's awesome. So tell us, before Ocho, real quick, you said the crew. Did the crew have a name? Was it like the collective, or was it a different crew? Or
I mean, in Salt Lake City, underground history with I've been through a lot of iterations. My DJ and my electronic music crew was originally the Dub Scouts, which morphed into Dub Wise.
Dub Scouts.
Isn't that great? we kind of really started cutting our teeth and providing the soundtrack for some legendary late night warehouse parties at the Crooked Arrow through the AMO tribe.
Was that part of the Hive ever at once?
So the Hive came a little bit later. That was in succession. We had the 50 Hertz Healers, referencing low bass music and that physical listening experience. That was a Burning Man crew for a while with Brylan Schultz of Natural Ventures. And we had this 2-story fire-breathing elephant art car called Ganesh that would hold about 100 to 150 people, climate-controlled DJ booth. Just
my brother, Sugar Boy Shane, actually helped build that one.
Yep, he was a part of that. Yeah, of course, all the requisite fire effects. And, and then... so it's been then of course getting involved with the Jank Stars, right?
The Jank Stars are amazing. The Jank Stars did something called Building Man. And I want to say in the 3rd year of the Jank Stars, Scotty Whitaker brought in, who's that group? One More Time. Who's the One More Time group?
We might have to come back.
Daft Punk.
Oh.
Yeah, Daft Punk. He brought in Daft Punk the 3rd year in Green River, Utah.
Okay.
It was phenomenal.
Okay.
Amazing. And to me, that sort of stemmed from Lightning in a Bottle, which was down there in that area.
That was about that era. That, of course, was in LA. And I spent a lot of time with the Jank Stars because that was really, moving away from festival culture is great in that it really provides that opportunity to participate and share ideas and meet new people and have fun.
And the energy's unbelievable at them, and you're dancing and ecstatic and all those things. Yeah, totally,
100%.
totally.
But also, it takes a tremendous amount of energy to get there. It takes a tremendous amount of resources and energy to sustain the thing.
The biggest thing that scares...
It's disposable.
Yeah, the biggest thing that scares the crap out of me of festivals is literally this. So we threw this event that was called We Run This Beach. And it was literally a running beach event that included a festival and 2 days. So we have invested like $18,000 into this event. 2 days before the event, guess how many people are signed up? We literally shut down roads for this. 2 days before the event, 4 people signed up. 4.
Oh, as far as purchasing tickets.
Yeah.
Oof.
Day of event, like 1,800 people show up. So it's like, wait a second, what did we do wrong? Well, we probably didn't do early bird registration. That probably would have helped us. And so there's like little things where one show will make or break you. So yeah, I think there's a lot of resources wasted in festival showing. And it comes back to what we were talking about a minute ago where, I love the culture, I love the buildup, but more people need to come together with people that have done it before, sort of take them under their wings in a way and say, do yours and have it be a feed into mine in a way, type thing, or some sort of that cultural growth,
Yeah. Well, that's one thing I really enjoy about the Jank Star Building Man, right, is now here is a property in the desert that gets constantly improved, and the whole theme of the event is ecological, right? It's primarily solar powered. There's workshops on, green building. Like over the last couple of years, they've been building a hempcrete dome, right? This might be not only people's first exposure to ecological building methods, but now they're in there. Yeah. They're mixing it. They're stomping and making cob. They're participating, and they really see that it's possible.
Yeah, I'll tell you a cool fun fact. So my first land development project I ever did with my father, I was 8 years old, and Tim Viteri from Green River, Viteri Watermelons, was my dad's partner, and my dad helped him buy 7,000 acres that is directly across from where Building Man is on the Green River. And so from where you put in the boats to go down the Green River up there, I forget what the put-in's called.
Swayze's Beach. Yep. Actually, that's the takeout for the Green River Daily.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So Nefertiti's the put-in.
Yeah, so Swayze's Beach to the road that goes through town. That's, I want to say it's like 3 or 7 miles, I forget. So the 7,000 acres was everything from the river east, and it was a dirt road. My dad came in and he helped him buy the property with a crazy finance structure strategy. And he got the water rights, and he got the watermelon farms and the alfalfa farms. What my dad got was 700 acres of the 7,000 acres, which was between the road and the river, which he sold for $35,000 per 5 acres. The farmer was quite upset. he's like, look, somebody's got to make money in land development. That's how it works. But I'll tell you, the hardest part about that property was the willow. That willow that was brought in that's like invasive.
Are you talking about tamarisk?
Yeah, tamarisk.
Yeah. So tamarisk often replaces the ecological function of willow.
Yeah. And what's interesting, it's necessary so that the bank doesn't erode.
Well, yes and no. So tamarisk was introduced in Southern California to prevent erosion.
Okay.
And it just was such a successful species, it just erupted up into the Colorado River corridor and all the tributaries. But one of the issues is that our western rivers want to move around. They want to water, they want to flood. And when we prevent erosion, which feels like we're doing the right thing, but what that actually does now is channelizes those rivers, which makes them cut deeper and deeper, and we lose that seasonal flood stage, which is really important for the native plants and especially the reproductive cycles of fish.
Oh yeah.
I think it's really interesting how advanced we think we are as humans because we've got like blinky lights and cell phones and all this cool stuff, which is great. I love blinky lights and cell phones.
For sure.
But our fundamental understanding of the interrelationships of nature is quite rudimentary.
Yeah.
And we have a long way to go to understand those things. And unfortunately, I feel like maybe as a species, we're like, that's too hard. Let's do something else. Yeah. But it's something I'm primarily really interested in and I find exciting.
Abby has some excitement around that same thing. She was just this last week in Oregon. And tell us about some of the root systems you saw and the places you were at where you saw some of that deep agriculture.
I mean, I was in the woods, the forests right next to the Pacific coast in Portland, Oregon. And
so like Seaside or Cannon City, like
yes, okay, Seaside, Oregon, and Cannon Beach and so on. But there were trees with their root systems on top of another tree root itself, or trees growing out, like the baby trees growing out of a massive dead log, and the log is, bigger than this room, It was incredible.
You called it something, or Dean called it something, I don't remember what, but it was like coping or where it's like the root system was right here and then it grew out of that and you called it something, a word. I can't remember what the word. The coppice of growth or whatnot. Just really cool big root systems. And what was fun is she showed one picture, and this is one of my favorite things to do when hiking, or just like the river cuts. It's amazing to me, and I really like this in the BLM structure of America, that when you're going out and you're looking for minerals or other things, number one, you're not allowed to take a motorized vehicle onto BLM land to look for minerals. Most people don't know that. You have to hike it. Number two is when you're putting in a claim post, you can't use blended metals. You can only use one element or one wood or glass. And the reason is, and I love this reason, I suspect this is the reason, because millions of years from now, when somebody's going and they're digging up stuff and they find galvanized steel, they'll be like, what the heck is this? And all of a sudden they'll think there was a culture there, and they'll actually disgrace the ground looking for more clues of what this new element structure is. That's why I believe they do it. And so if it was just zinc for the screw to create it, then it won't throw them on these crazy adventures to find out what it was, right? So sort of like in the conspiracies, when we mine for coal, every now and then we find an iron hammer in coal from millions of years ago, whatever it is, or 140,000 years ago. And there were people back then. People don't realize this. There were people back then that lived amongst the trees and figured stuff out and everything else, and they made things, and we wonder what they are. But the hydrocarbonization of the pressure and everything else, all there is left is a hammer. So there's no other person there. There's no dinosaur. There's no piece. And so it's really interesting to look at those pieces. But what I love is when a road comes through, because now we need a road. So they drill and they blast, and we can literally see the root systems of the trees going down like 20 feet to get to minerals. I love that.
Yeah.
To me, that's like real good regenerative organic agriculture in a way to see what the plants are naturally doing.
Or it's what our agriculture should learn from, is what seeing these old established ecosystems, the evidence of what they've been doing. Abby, I saw this same thing at Olympic National Park in Washington, where, the young trees come off of the old, dead tree, which eventually decomposes. And then sometimes those trees are now kind of stilted. You see the roots and their growth. Are you too familiar with Suzanne Simard? She wrote Finding the Mother Tree.
That lady. That's the lady out of British Columbia, right?
Out of British Columbia. Yeah. Incredible book. But really I love what she spent her life doing, was really discovering those interconnectedness of different species.
Totally agree.
In cooperative
that
growth.
Forest she studied for 20 years with people, and the one tree, the biggest tree, was 80% of the life of the forest of a touch, and then the 3 biggest trees was 50%. And they studied the fungi and all those pieces. Absolutely love that story. And that's actually a really good segue to something that we talked about prior to this. And it's a very controversial subject that we would love for you to touch on. I know it's a little bit emotional for you personally, but what I loved about her mother tree story is it was actually an earlier show where it came up where if you could speak for the plants, right? So what's the purpose of life to you? And a person we had on a show earlier talked about the purpose of life for them. And then I said, okay, with all the work that you've done working with the plants, if you could speak for the plants, like in some city, rivers vote, and it's a board of people that represent that river, and they vote as parliament in the river. So if you could speak for the plants, what would you say a plant's purpose of life is? The answer I was hoping for them to say, well, the same purpose I have. Like, to live life to the fullest and all those things. Yeah. But I like what they said. They said, well, I'm not conscious like a plant that I know of, something to this effect. So what I loved about the mother tree, though, and this is why I brought it up, was in that mother tree, it literally shows that the mother tree makes way for its own genealogy of trees first. And then it lets in some of the others because it's important, right? Mm-hmm. So if you could share a little bit about your son and or your 16-year-old, I believe it was a son, right?
No, my 16-year-old Gray identified as non-binary.
Oh, okay. Apologize.
Not a problem. It's I didn't specify that earlier.
Okay.
But yeah, I lost one of the great lights of my life in November 18th, 2024. So still pretty fresh.
Yeah.
I'm actually doing surprisingly good on the radio to not just break into tears. So, but since that time, I was forced to be confronted with caring for a loved one after death, and a sudden unexpected death really makes you think quickly. And I have a coworker and research partner, Christy Clay, who's a professor at Westminster University, who unfortunately lost her mom earlier in 2024. And we do a lot of composting projects, especially around biocomplete compost and generating the array of microorganisms needed for healthy soil. And she brought to my attention the green burial practices around human composting.
Wow.
Right. And so when I lost my child and it came time to care for their body, to me, this is one of the great loves of my life, one of my, most difficult heartbreak. And to me, honoring their life through caring for their body really came down to making sure that body returns to the natural cycle of the earth, right?
Absolutely.
I think people hear human composting, they get a little freaked out because they think about the scene from Fargo with the wood chipper, and it's not at all like that, right? Your microbiome that is allowing you to exist by helping you digest food and stimulating your central nervous system and your mental health and all the things our microbiome does for us, that then in turn, when you die, decomposes your body and makes those nutrients available.
Yeah.
And to me, that's eternal life, right?
Absolutely.
And I will be traveling here in a couple of weeks. So the process, it's important to not be embalmed. I live in Utah. This is not legal yet in Utah. I've been up on Capitol Hill speaking to committees trying to advocate for this, but I had to have my child shipped to Nevada, where they're placed into a vessel with the appropriate amount of carbon materials. The body breaks down in 35 to 45 days.
Wow.
It's so fast. Then any of the bones or difficult things are ground and reincorporated. And I'll be driving down to pick up that material here in a couple of weeks. And I will then take it to our property, the Ocho, and we have a 1 acre food forest that we're going to be planting called Memory Grove. And so, whether or not people choose this accelerated decomposition or, human composting, to me, I think a helpful part of grieving is having a living and active memorial that I can visit. My gray loved Honeycrisp apples. I'm going to be planting apple trees there. That they're, I definitely have not kept count of how many plants and animals have sustained me as a 38-year-old human being on planet Earth.
Yeah.
But I feel like it is, I wouldn't say it's a duty. It's going to be my honor and privilege to return my nutrients someday to that nutrient cycle.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Beautiful.
yeah, to me, the great purpose of what's the point of being alive? Being alive. Like, don't overthink it. Just be alive, right? And it takes nutrients and energy and things to be alive. And I hold the key in my body to other life forms. Like, again, that's eternal life.
Yeah.
And I think it says something about the disconnect of our culture and the fear around death, that the most common practice is to pickle a body and preserve it. Like, it's freaky. Like, it's straight up something out of a horror film, what we do to our loved ones in order to embalm them and then put them in the ground. And it's like the exact opposite of what I do when I'm trying to reincorporate organic matter as a farmer composting. It's like, how could I make this not decompose? Like, how afraid of being a living creature that's part of a web of life are we as a culture where it's taboo to return our vessel to that cycle?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's something I'm passionate about. I would like to see the laws be amended here in Utah. I believe there's 14 states that allow this now, and hopefully more hop on board, because it just makes sense, both ecological and economic.
Totally. I'll tell you. So Abby and I, as we got to know each other over the last few months, she asked me once, she said, Aaron, I can't remember exactly how you said it, but you said something to the effect of, I can't remember. I want to say it was like, where do minerals come from? Or what do you think happens to us when we die, or something? Mm-hmm. And I literally said, I think, well, for those that choose, we become crystalline structures. And just like a petrified forest or petrified wood, it's my favorite type of rock is a petrified wood. Mm-hmm. The reason is because the petrified wood literally has sucked up minerals and nutrients from decomposed things, fed itself, and then it literally grew into what it is, and now it's petrified, and I can literally see valleys on the side of it. And so whenever I find a good petrified piece, I literally put it on a mantle, and I think to myself, okay, here I am right there, motivating somebody that's sitting right there overlooking a valley having a festival. Mm-hmm. That's what a petrified is to me. And I literally said, I believe that we become crystalline structures, and we become these mineral life forms, and these mineral life forms are for the purpose of feeding future organisms. And so we become an ever circling part of the circle of life, more or less, right? That's what was said.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's so beautiful, exactly what you just described to me, because I am so in tune with exactly what you just said. Great. Exactly.
Well, let's spread that enthusiasm, that awareness, because, losing a child is tough. Having them now be a state away, and just all of the additional cost and the permitting and the fuss.
Sure.
When it comes time for my son to do that same process for me, I want it to be as easy as possible.
Yep.
So.
And what's interesting is, back to the mother tree.
Yeah.
So the one thing that I loved about the mother tree research I did with her, as I researched her, was I started to think about how DNA, we can store data on our DNA. And I think to myself of a decomposing tree and the micronutrients coming in and decomposing that tree and learning from their ancestor by tapping into it and then eating the sugars, which are the DNA and all the pieces, and sort of re-educating the system based on that falling. And so what better way to live on forever than to allow the apple orchards to live upon their body, and then for you to come take upon that fruit or me to come take upon that fruit, and a little bit of a learning and a remembrance of exactly what that person was or is carried on. So I just love that. I think it's really amazing story. So one thing I want to chat with is, James, who introduced us? How do I know you?
Oh, I think it was probably either through Sugar Boy Shane or Stephen Camo or Brylan.
Oh, I think it's one more.
Who was it?
Craig.
Oh, it was Craig. Yeah, because I was hired in 2016 by Wasatch Community Gardens to build our urban organic farm, which houses our farm-based job training program. We nicknamed the Green Team, which is a social. It's a social program where we hire women who are experiencing homelessness. They spend 16 weeks on the farm, and during that time, I like to say we just help them find that spark, and then give them the kindling and the fuel that they need to turn that into a flame. Often people aren't trapped in poverty because of a lack of opportunity or resources. There's often something else getting in their way. Mm-hmm. And it can be tough out there, and especially for individuals who've suffered abuse and trauma and these things, we can almost lose sight of who we are. Yeah. And so it's been one of the great joys of my life to have developed this program, which I've now handed off to some other staff at Wasatch Community Gardens. I still work regularly with them in my capacity, but since 2016, we've had roughly 100 women come through the program. Wow. And we have right around an 80% success rate with getting those women into jobs and housing. Wow. So anyway, I did a little detour there because it's something I'm excited about. But when I was first building this farm, unfortunately, urban agriculture is often viewed as a temporary placeholder until real development happens. And so I've also been tasked with how do we design a farm that is incredibly productive, but that might only live on a site for 5 or 10 years before it needs to move to another location. And as a geek of alternative building methods, shipping containers were something I was excited about, and so it made sense to me to design our physical infrastructure, the processing areas, the walk-in coolers, the shop, the kitchen, all of these things into shipping containers, so that that's very expensive infrastructure that now is very portable. Yep. And I'm recently in the process of moving that iteration of the farm, and fun kind of duh moment is, as we packed up the farm to move, I Tetris packed those shipping containers, right, with all of our agricultural plastics and tools and trellising and everything. And it's like, oh, wait, a shipping container is not only a great building, you can ship stuff with it. Duh. Nice. And so, our farm is powered by an off-grid solar array. And so, the moving process was decoupling those containers from one another, packing most everything in them. Yep. having them craned onto trucks,
Yep.
had them dropped at the new location, and we were functional at the old site and functional at the new site in the span of about 2 weeks.
Wow, that's amazing.
But anyway, Craig, who I know through Burning Man and through the Jank Stars and through this long history of Salt Lake counterculture, he was working with you, I believe, at My Mini Casa.
Yeah.
And My Mini Casa was very generous in helping us get some containers, and Craig, cut
Thank you. It
them
was
and
a
put the
fun job.
doors on, and
And put in these cool little ring things, and then hung this like tent thing so people could garden under the shade, and then they could open it. It was such a cool project.
We had two 40-foot high cubes parallel to one another. Yeah, and Craig welded a bunch of eyelets on them so that I could stretch shade fabric in between the two of them, because, shade is great, but B, when we're harvesting vegetables, we want to get them from the field to chilled as soon as possible. So getting that processing happening in the shade is super important.
Yeah.
And I want to say it was April 2019, I think, or it might have been 2018, 2019. We had an unfortunate electrical fire, which turned one of those containers into a pipe bomb practically, because I had hyper insulated them for the walk-in cooler and obliterated all that infrastructure. And again, My Mini Casa really was crucial in helping us get back on our feet with the donation of 2
And I'll tell you why. It's one of my favorite stories. It literally moved me to my core in a way that's just unimaginable. So what was interesting is that when the fire happened, the way the news came out was really bad PR for My Mini Casa.
Oh.
Yeah, because the news article came out that My Mini Casa had donated these containers that blew up. That's what the PR had read.
Oh, man.
And so
It's amazing how the media just gets it so wrong.
Yeah, exactly. So my partner at the time said, Aaron, go do damage control. So I came over and I met with some of your workers. And this one worker, who I want to say was also in the news article, said, it's so sad that we lost these containers, because as a person experiencing homelessness, the one thing that we don't have is a place to secure our stuff. And if we, sorry, I get choked up a little bit too. If we had a place to secure our stuff, it's like the start of a new life. And I literally went back to my partner and I said, we've got to give them 2 more. We literally have to give them 2 more so they can build out this and just, give them that security more than anything. And I think it really helped. They weren't as nice. I remember them being a little rough condition, But, it was still, I think, a beautiful process. And, I've loved working with Wasatch Community Gardens. I mean, the story it's magical what you guys do. And so naturally, when Abby and I were together, and she specifically was talking about a friend she has in St. Louis, I believe. And she said, Aaron, it'd be so cool if we could figure out, and tell me what you said to the best of your knowledge, remember?
I want to say I was talking about how nature spreads seeds and how available food can actually be, and then if cities started planting more food, and then I thought, well, what if it was a responsibility that we could give to homeless people and they could start their little space and all this stuff? And I didn't know you. I didn't know your story. And we're sitting in the car and I'm staring at this green space that's like dead and vines all over the place. But I'm like thinking about how to give these people an opportunity to like grow their own food and then feel responsible for something, and then maybe even have something to sell in the process, or building a farmer's market, or building a life for themselves. Because I understand, our brain chemistry is so attached to our bodies, and we are what we eat. So if we can give their brain chemistry some nutrition, it's like a whole boost of life for everything and everybody. And then he's like, I've got somebody for you to meet.
Oh, Abby, what I think about when you share that idea is, for our folks who are dealing with homelessness, one of the first issues to really work through is that these individuals often have a really short time horizon, right? Yet a lot of the solutions we want to work on are long term, right? Like everyone in this room probably got plans that are not only in weeks but years and sometimes decades of goals, right?
Yeah.
For an individual who's living on the street, I mean, their time horizon is hours. And so hours is a very difficult strategic framework of time.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the most powerful tools to break through and expand that time horizon is the planting of a seed, right? Because I don't care how good you do it today, nothing's going to happen. Probably not till tomorrow, probably not till the next day. Some of our brassicas and things are coming up in 3-4 days. Most of our solanaceous crops are a week. And so I don't care how many seeds I plant. Every time I see one germinated, I get a little emotional tickle. It's like, ooh, look at that. You know what I mean? And it's a success. And it's also a shared success, right? It's like I did a thing, but also the plant did a thing, and now we're in this together. And so it's almost like magic what that does to the psychology of, and I've seen it every single season, and it's so great, right? And we do 2 cohorts, a spring cohort and a fall cohort, and the spring cohort grows all of the seedlings for our annual spring plant sale on Mother's Day. And, now they're planting a seed, which then gets transplanted, sometimes a couple of times. Now it's a seedling. Now those go out to thousands of gardens around the valley. And now those women, they're the provider. They're putting out resources instead of being on the receiving end of generosity. Now that's this bigger time horizon victory, right? Like just a series of little wins can just help steer that ship back to getting to a emotional position where you're feeling powerful enough to set and achieve goals, you know?
It'd be so beautiful that I would love to see that goes along with this at some point. And just a thought, maybe you sell that. It'd be cool to take, how when you have a plant, there's usually a little plastic tab in there and it tells you what it is.
Yeah.
It'd be really cool to put a QR code on there of the women that are doing this. And as these plants are growing around the valley, create almost like with, his name's Adam Sidwell he has FSH Studios, and he has this, it's almost like a Pokemon Go thing called Swords. And it'd be cool to set up a sort of like a partnership relationship with him where people go around and they're gamified and they scan the little QR codes of all the plants. And it's literally these women that are popping up. And now not only is it you're giving back to the community in this way, but now it's like, here's where all your plants really ended up. And they're just popping up.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of love and energy, the cups would be overflowing in so many ways. I mean, my excitement is literally that. Like, how do we get people excited? Have we said it yet today on this show? Abby has this cool saying.
Oh, let's hear it, Abby.
Maybe we said it. I don't remember. Into the soil I go to mend my mind and heal my soul.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Yep. And so it's like, man, the soil, it's literally the as above, it's so below.
Yeah.
Like soil heals.
It does. And, I love, sometimes I call these kind of sentiments can kind of be viewed as woo, right? You know what I mean? Like, oh, it's the magic and the spirit of the earth, which I'm on board with. I am not afraid to vocalize that.
Yeah.
But also there's some good peer-reviewed, straight, hard scientific fact to the microbiome we were talking about previously, right? Like the organisms that live in you and on you that you could not live without. One of the primary modes that we reinforce that good microbiome is from healthy living soil.
Yeah.
Right? And
absolutely.
it's one thing to eat food grown in that soil, but it's a whole other situation to have that soil under your fingernails. And it's such a primally gratifying secret ingredient. I love sharing it.
Yeah.
Right. We get a lot of volunteer groups at Wasatch Community Gardens, and some of my favorite groups are the computer programmers, or we had a group of compliance regulation officers, and to get folks on a shovel and working in soil. I mean, I can beat you into the ground with hard labor in 4 hours, and to have you smile, give me a high five, thank me, ask me when you can come back.
Yeah.
It's such a gratifying feeling to spread that joy through literally doing the good work of cultivating food from the earth.
Does the Wasatch Community Gardens food go to restaurants? Does it go to CSAs? Does it go to farmers markets? Like where does it go?
Well, so as an organization, we have our community garden wing, and we have 19 community gardens around the valley. Those are folks who come in and rent a plot, growing food for their family. A lot of folks have gardens at home, but they want to be in that community environment. Yeah. We have our school garden program that works with kids in Title I schools with school gardens.
What's a Title I school?
Generally lower economic schools in lower economic indexed areas.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool.
We have our education program, which teaches roughly 40 workshops every year on how to grow food. We have our volunteer program that folks can come get involved. And then we have our organic farm and our farm-based job training program. And there, all of that food we donate to low-income individuals that might not otherwise have access. We've really designed that farm, especially with kids in mind. And what I learned pretty quickly is a lot of times the kids that I'm aiming to feed are in a situation where they lack access to a kitchen. So we like to focus on what we call the snack attack veggies. So cherry tomatoes, little cucumbers, strawberries and blackberries and snacking peppers. I want things kids can just nosh right away.
Yeah. How many of the seeds are heirloom versus F1s versus other?
So the majority of what we plant are open pollinated heirloom varieties. We also produce seed for the Snake River Seed Cooperative, which is based out of Boise. And we are a collection of growers that are growing in the Great Basin bioregion for the Great Basin bioregion, working on regional adaptation and selection of cultivars for us. We do plant some hybrids. I'm not afraid of hybrids. Hybrids are not the same thing as a genetically modified organism, right? A hybrid just means I'm taking two distinctly genetic like spinaches, for example, and I'm breeding them with one another, hoping to get both of the traits of their parents, which can be a very important tool to overcome pests and disease. And contrary to popular belief, they generally produce viable seed. Right? Like, I think there's a lot of misinformation or wrongly held beliefs that these things have terminator seeds that you can't plant, which a lot of genetically modified seeds do, because those corporations really demand you buy their seed every year. So I've actually, one of the great joys of my life is I've been able to, steward some of these vegetables for 7 or 8 generations now, which that's when you achieve that regional adaptation. And I can see that increased productivity with less water. I can see that mildew resistance in the fall that this zucchini now has because I've been selecting for it. And I have a unique super hot pepper that I'm developing with a good friend of mine, Dave Gillette, that it's ruthless. It's like Reaper level hot, but we're working to create this pepper in a living memory to his son, Tatum, that he lost, unfortunately, a few years ago. And that's what really opened my eyes to how important a living memory for someone we've lost can be. Plus, it makes you cry. You know what I mean? And sometimes, for those stoic folks that maybe have a hard time letting the tears go, right? Like eat one of our peppers.
That'd be for me.
Open the gates.
That's awesome. That's really good. Other promos that we could maybe give for you, I think would be good and intentional.
Great.
If you have some of those, how people may be able to support buying the seedling plants or things like that. What does a seedling plant at the Mother's Day sale usually sell for?
We sell most of our veggies are in 2-inch pots, and those are $3. And we also have some larger, more rare varieties that are in a 4-inch pot, and those are $5.
Okay.
We also have a number of edible perennials and flowers and herbs and things as well. But especially, our price points beat your big box stores, and things are not only certified organic, but I'm such a geek for biocomplete compost and living soil that I view these plants as little like beneficial micro bombs that just happen to have a plant as a fuse. And, I want the plants that people go home with to not only do amazing, I want the soil and everything else around them to do amazing.
That is awesome.
So
I love that.
Our
garden bombs.
Yeah. Our annual spring plant sale is Mother's Day weekend. It's on Saturday, May 10th from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. And we're at a new location this year at the Utah State Fair Park.
Oh, great.
So we've outgrown our previous location, and I'm really excited to see the surge of interest in growing your own food. I think one thing that really came out of the pandemic was people being interested in being more involved in producing some of meeting some of their own needs through their own efforts.
Sure.
And what's been even greater to watch is that was not just a flash in the pan, like maybe baking sourdough bread or some of these other things were. It's been a genuinely sustained interest. And to me, that just speaks volumes about how that can instill life with just, a little more meaning.
Yeah.
Right? Is growing your own food the answer to all problems in your life?
Yeah.
No, that's a freshly harvested tomato in late June. Yes, a freshly harvested slicing tomato. This can rebuild bridges with your neighbor you may have an issue with. You start handing those tomatoes around your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Like, again, this is that joy. These are those meaningful gifts that your garden gave to you that you can share with your community. And again, there's a lot of like just icky like fighting and disagreements and people picking sides of politics like it's a sport team they're trying, you know what I mean? And but ultimately, we might not agree with each other's politics, but we sure agree about eating good food and wanting to feed our family and our neighbors. And, you know, I sometimes, I want to be mindful that sometimes in our culture, eating food sometimes gets viewed as a nuisance, right? Like, oh, I'm busy and I'm doing stuff and, oh, I got to stop and eat and I'm just like eating in my car and I'm making a mess. And do you know what I mean? And I want to see more of that pure joy that comes from sitting and having a 3-hour slow dinner with some wine and some friends and some courses, or, you know, those potlucks where we're sharing, or, you know, like those are those opportunities for connection.
Yeah, I agree.
And yeah, I just get really
soil regeneration and social regeneration.
Because we're not only just ingesting the food, we're also ingesting each other's energy.
Yeah. And the microbes.
And the microbes.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree. When is your next festival or mini event at Ocho?
So those are generally not public.
Oh, okay.
And so, you know, just respecting I always obey all state and local laws. Good. And, you know,
Great.
that's a private piece of property. So we don't generally do any festivals or parties or anything there.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I do love sharing what we're doing, and the Ocho Society as a nonprofit, that was an outgrowth of that property. We love connecting people and planet through education and experiences. And so folks have to hunt me out in person for an invitation to one of those things.
Cool.
But festival-wise, you can find me at the Building Man Festival at the Jenkstar Ranch, which is the weekend of starts on Thursday, April 24th and runs through Sunday, April 27th.
Wow.
I will be playing. I'm a bass music DJ, Heirloom. I'll be playing Friday night.
Is it kid friendly?
It is very kid friendly. There's a whole kid camp called the Coyote Camp that has full programming. My kids have been going there since they're in the belly. I will be there with my 12-year-old son, and he doesn't miss one. He absolutely loves it. Good. And it is, you know, it's such a fun place to be a kid, but I think it also really builds the relationship as a parent. Yeah. When your child can see you finally just goofing off, having a blast.
Totally.
Like, I think it's really important. So
it'll be my twin's birthday. So
perfect.
I would love to come down on the 26th and 27th for that.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Absolutely.
And I absolutely love Scotty Sultronic. I mean, man, like so many things with Scotty that are just phenomenal.
Yeah, he's a really visionary fellow with just a heart of gold. And it's been really interesting to see that festival evolve over the last several years as the Moab community has really grown. There's a lot of really cool things happening down in the Moab area.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. That's really good. Well, Abby, do you have any other questions for our amazing guest we've had that we're going to have on again? And I want to go to Memory Grove eventually. Yeah. So any other questions?
This has been a beautiful conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I feel the same way. You have any other questions for us or thoughts?
Great. So if folks want more information on my work with Wasatch Community Gardens, they can find that at wasatchgardens.org. And for folks that want information on the Building Man Festival, that's buildingmanfestival.com.
And that's wasatchgardens.org? So
wasatchgardens.org.
Okay. Great. Yeah. So WASATCH gardens.org.
Yes.
Look forward to having you on the show again next time.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Awesome. So for you, our audience, viewers, and the people, check out our amazing guests the festivals, the nonprofits that they represent, and where they've come from. And if you are looking for a place to get back into community, to find your way in life, please go and check them out. And you're welcome everywhere we go. All of our amazing guests that we have on, they're very connectable to get in touch with and see at different places and events. Life is really about getting out there and being a part of it and mending the soul. We look forward to you tuning in next time. Thanks for joining us at the Thryv Movement.